Good morning. Morning. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Talk back to me. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning. I hope everyone's doing wonderful in the house of the Lord this morning. How many of you glad to be here? You could be somewhere else. You could be on the other side of the dirt, so to speak. However, you're on this side of the door, so you should be happy about that. Even though today is the day, I know some of us are just not ready to go this year. I heard a joke on yesterday that I'll try to repeat it. You know, I have a tendency to not maybe say them exactly in the spirit of how they were said in the beginning. But I'm going to try here. Said that God said that when you get to heaven, there were three things you were going to expect. Number one, I'm glad that I made it. Right? Number two, you look to the left and look to the right of you, you're going to probably see somebody you didn't think should have made it. Yes? And then you look to the left and right of you again, you're going to notice that there was probably somebody there that you thought should have made it that's not there. Something to think about. Number one, you're going to be glad that you're there. Number two, there's probably going to be somebody there that you didn't think should have been there. Because we're not the judge, right? Then there's also probably going to be somebody that you thought should have been there that was there. And I just thought that was an interesting analogy that he used yesterday for a graduation speech. He was talking about people actually graduating. But he said it also applies to the kingdom of God. And I thought that was a very powerful analogy. Something to think about. We're all fortunate to be in situations or where we are because we all will make it by faith in his mercy anyway. So last week, of course, we talked about the book of James. We went through James all the way up until first chapter of James, and we stopped at verse 8. So today we're just going to pick up on verse 9, and we're going to go forward from there. All right? Let me get my thing here. So we're in James, first chapter, and we're on verse 9. So just to recap, last week, the last verse we read was a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, and we went on to explain in detail exactly what does he mean by that. We talk about being indecisive. You know, serving God, you have to be consistent. Anything in this life, you have to be consistent. Think about it. Consistency. You can get away maybe one or two times with some things, but there has to be some things that you have to do consistently. And sometimes, when you do things consistently, things kind of go your way sometimes. Oftentimes, we talk about things in terms of athletic events. I went to the ball game last night in WSSU. Yeah, they're going to the national championship. Woo, right? And I know a couple of plays in that game that if they didn't go their way, would have probably could have significantly changed the outcome of that game. However, these guys have been playing consistent all year. All year they've been doing the right things, and sometimes when you're doing the right things kind of fall in your favor. That's often a quote that says that success favors the prepared. Or you hear that, favor lends itself to those that are prepared. Meaning that you're there, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, you're working forward, and sometimes we just need breaks. Sometimes we need some things to fall our way. And that was much so when we talk about the double-mindedness, don't be double-minded in that make up your mind, this is your decision, go forth, and be consistent in that. Alright, so down to verse 9, so into the new stuff, they said, let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. Let the brother of low degree rejoice in that he is exalted. What is he talking about here? Low degree. He's talking about humility. Humility, I believe you hear some people say, well, this person is just humble. But I believe humility is actually something that is a process over time that you actually learn. There are things and situations that happen to you in your life that can totally, what we call rock the world or change the world. And when those situations come, they make you change how you actually view yourself. You know, I believe it's one verse about saying you should not view yourself more highly than you are. There are things that come in your life, say for instance, let's give you an example. You have some people who worship their children. And everything about their children, oh, Tommy's so great, and Tommy's done this, and Tommy's done that. And then Tommy makes a mistake that everybody gets to see. That's a very humbling experience to some parents. Because their child was D1. They couldn't do anything wrong, but everything they did was perfect, and then this child makes this one mistake. Now you worship this child. That can be a very humbling experience to some people. I've had my share of humbling experiences, and I still do. But having humbling experiences actually puts us in a position to trust God more. And that's all I believe being under humility is that you understand that it's not because of who I am or not because of my power, but it's because of who he is and what he's able to do for me. All God wants us to do is trust him. And sometimes, trusting him for us as humans is not easy because we always want to see things that we trust. I see that, I know it's there, so I trust it. But to be able to trust something you don't see, that takes a lot of power. A whole lot of power. Down to verse 10. But the rich in that he is made low, because as the flower of the grass, he should pass away. So here, again, we're going on to verse 11. So, for the sun is no sooner rising with a burning heat, but it withereth the grass, and the flower therefore falleth, and the grace of the fashion of it perishes. So also shall the rich man fade away in his riches. Simply meaning, how many of you have ever seen a U-Haul fall behind a hearse? Typically it doesn't happen. You do not take what you make in this world. You do not take all these things. At the end of the day, all that's going in the ground is that physical body and soul is already returned to wherever it comes from, or wherever it's destined to go. You don't take these things with you. These things are here, put here to be tools for us, to help one another through this life, because God knew we needed them. However, they do not make us who we are. You have some people who are defined by the things they have. I've talked to some rich people. I've been very fortunate to come in contact with a lot of powerful people. Just in the last week, how many of you actually watched The Apprentice? The Apprentice. That was the show that Donald Trump does. He has all those people. Well, now they do the celebrities, so it's only really famous people on there. But when that show first started out, there were normal people, so to speak, that they would try out for it, and then they would be selected to be on the program, and then they would compete, and then at the end of the show, the whole thing was that you get to run one of his $1 million companies, or his $1 billion companies, for a year and go forward. Well, I had the opportunity to meet yesterday. It's only been one African-American winner. Dr. Randall Pickett. He's also a Rhodes Scholar, very smart gentleman. I had the chance to have dinner with him and spend a couple hours with him. And just picking his brain, very nice guy, very smart guy, and just picking his brain to talk to him about how he was selected to run the company and all the things that he went through to get to that point in his life. He talks about the humbling experiences and him being African American, some of the things he go through. He went through, even with him and Donald. And he was talking about even at the end of the show, they had made in their mind that they were going to select too. And he was like, and he was talking about, that was his moment. It was like, okay, all right, God, I've worked hard, I've done everything, I've won every single event that I was in. Versus the other person has lost a couple of them, and now they want to make two of us. And he said, he's talking about how he had to make a stand. Even if it meant that he lost, he was willing to make that stand. And fortunately enough for him, we all know the outcome that he didn't lose, and he went on to work with him. So there comes points in different times in your life that even the rich men you meet, they'll tell you about some of the decisions they have to make. Because a lot of them didn't start out like that. We do have what we call in society, when we have these different epsilons, these different parts of society. You have those who have, you have those in the middle, and then you typically have those who do not have. And the framework for poverty says that those who have, they'll care more about their relationships with people. Now think about how many of you, just tell the truth, watch those Housewives of Beverly Hills, Housewives of Atlanta, and all those. And to be honest, what do they always talk about? How many parties they're going to go to? Who they meet. Remember, one group of them snuck up in the president's party, right? It wasn't about money for them. It's about, I'm in the party with the president and I shouldn't be here, so I'm in an exclusive club. So their things are built on relationships. They care less about money because they already have it, and they probably always going to have it. Okay? Then you have the lower end of that, which is the framework, Ruby Page framework for poverty says that the lower end, those that are poor, at some point, they almost give up. So therefore, everything that they spend their money on, they spend their time is to entertain themselves. Now think about it. You'll see people who you know barely had 2 nickels to rub together at every night show that come to town. Or they had all the comedy shows and all this kind of stuff. And this is what, this is how research said that they spend time to entertain themselves because they're trying to forget about that state. Think about a lot of people who get into substance abuse, that's kind of how it starts, right? Well, I had a bad day, I'm just going to do this so I can feel good or I can sleep. And then the body gets addicted to that stuff, and now it becomes habitual, and now they got a whole different situation where they were using something as a pacifier. Which is, thank God for us that we have Jesus to go to when times get rough like that. And that's the difference between them and us. It's not a whole lot of difference in that we believe and we trust God, and He's going to be the one that's going to secure us when those times do come in our lives, because we have Him too. If anybody told you that your Christianity walk was going to be a perfect life but nothing happened, then they lied to you. I'll be first to tell you that. Because the same things that I would have dealt with on that side, I deal with on this side. However, I have somebody to go to as my advocate on this side to help me to deal with it. Versus they do not. So they cope with them the best way they know how. And if the truth be told, some of you were on that side and that's how you cope with it. And if the truth be told, if you were still there, that's how some of you would cope. So what we're doing is what? Showing them their better way of how to cope with these things. So, and then according to our framework, the people in the middle, they spend all that time trying to get to the next level. So people in the middle have a tendency not to enjoy life as much because they spend all that time trying to get to the level that they may never achieve. And then think about it, the working middle class, some of them work themselves to death. Working overtime, working this, working that, because they want to have the appearance of being in the other class, but they may never reach it. And many of us fall into that category. We watch those shows and see that, oh, she has a designer bag, or she has this and it costs X amount of dollars. So now we go and we work ourselves to death to be able to afford that when they can really care less about that. Because remember, for them it's more about their relationships. So I pull all this back together, not that I'm going on a tangent, pull this all back together and say, a lot of people who have a lot of things can care less about them because they're really kind of miserable. And one thing that Dr. Pinkett told me, he said one of the best things in the world to be able to be is be wealthy and anonymous. And I never thought about that. He said be wealthy and anonymous. Now I'm not advocating this, but one of you went out here and played the lottery and you hit, everybody in here knows that. It's going to be honest with you. You'll find people that you didn't know you were kin to. You can get sued by people you didn't even know. They say you breathe the air. All kinds of privileged spouses will come up. Because you can get sued for pretty much anything in this country. And the sad part about it, I found out from one of my friends was saying that one of the reasons we have so many lawsuits in this country is because that you always have to defend yourself. And whatever the cost is, that's just the cost of defending yourself. So if somebody comes up to you, I just want to sue you because I don't like the way you look. And they have to make it to court. You have to spend money on a lawyer to defend yourself for something that you can't even control. But then for the judge to get up there and say, well, I throw this out, but you just spent $5,000 or $6,000 on this lawyer just to come in there to represent you because you don't know what else is going to happen. Isn't that's kind of country we live in. It's still the best country on the face of the earth. No question about it. However, we do have our fault. Versus in Europe, if you do that, the person who sued you, if they lose, they have to pay for that. That's why they don't have it. They don't have this, not even close. So if you're in Europe and you're going to bring charges against somebody, you're going to be pretty certain about it, or you're going to feel very strongly about it, because you have to pay, if they find you involved, you have to pay for their defense also. Interesting, isn't it? Oh, that makes so much sense, Antoine. So, all these things come, but all these things happen to make us whole. God uses all these different things. So it doesn't matter what stage of life you are. These people who have plenty of money, they have problems. They just don't advertise it. The people on the low end, they have problems. And the people in the middle, they with all, he wants us to be humble under his hand so he can lead us to God, because he has a place for all of us in there. He has the rich. The rich give to the poor in turn do things that you have to keep, the poor in turn are taken care of, because he said in the Bible what? The poor will be with us always, right? So it's always looking at it, you just fight a good fight. You know, whatever you take that to be. Then he goes on to say in verse 12, so in verse 12 we start talking about internal rewards. Internal rewards said, blessed is the man that endures temptation, for when he is tried, he shall receive the crown of life, which the Lord hath promised to him that love him. That's fighting a good fight. Endure temptation. Temptation comes. Things come to tempt us. However, we have to stay the course. And he said that if you stay the course, there's some internal rewards. And the eternal reward here, he said, he shall receive the crown of life. The crown of life which the Lord hath promised to them that love him, fighting through temptation. So then on to verse 14, he says, but every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed. Now, I can be honest about me. I can't speak to you, but think about it for a second. Sometimes when you got yourself in some situations, there were things that was your own lust that drove you to those situations. I walk in the mall, I see a pair of Air Jordans. They cost $200. I know I need to pay this. However, I really want these shoes, and I know they don't have a 1 size 13 because the shoes come in big sizes. They only bring like 114, 113, and then there's like 50 other shoes on smaller sizes. And it seems like everybody wants to sale on this 6 foot whatever, and they wear 13, 14, 15, and that's that one pair. And you just have to be at the right place at the right time. And even if I buy this pair of shoes because I know they're hard to get, I can go back and list them on eBay, and I'm going to get triple what I paid for them. But I just got to wait a little bit. But I'm being drawn away by my own lust, because if I don't pay this, and then my lights ain't on, then I'm going to have some issues at the house. But I know I'm going to get the money back, but the lights are not on today. That's just a simple example of how we can be drawn away by our own lust. And I know a lot of times when we think lust, most people think sexual sin. Because that's typically what it's tied to. Most people say, well, he was lusting out, or she lusted out him. Lust can be a lot more than just that. A lot of times in Christianity, we kind of narrow our view and fix certain things because that's what we struggle with. So if sexual sin is not a struggle for you, then lust, remember he said every man is tempted, and every man can be drawn away by that lust. So if sexual sin is not if sexual sin is it's only equated to lust, then that means that means in a sense that you could not be tempted. If lust is equal to sexual sin, and sexual sin is not an issue for you, then how do you be tempted? Therefore, it cannot just be that. Are we all on the same page? But it depends, because we all have our vices. Some of us, we have shoe vices. Some of us have sports vices. I got to be in every sport event I can be in. I'm down to go to Alabama next week. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to go. You see, WSSU going to do it now. I got to be in person to see it. It's just how I am. And the others, there's other things. Some of us are like that about our cars. It cannot be a speck of dust on the car. Versus me, I can care less. A to B, that's all I need. It's a machine. So we all have our lust. We all have our lust that draws us away, that gets us into trouble when we know we should do. There are things that we should do, but sometimes all that's a part of us living this life. Then it says, when lust has conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth this death. Verse 15 again. Then when lust hath conceived, it bringeth forth sin, and sin, when it is finished, bringeth forth death. If you notice that they never equated lust and sin, it said that lust can lead to sin. Now, it's not bad for me to lust for those tennis shoes. Right? Because I want those Air Jordans. However, if you keep following the trail of that, it can lead to some sin. How? It's not going to be the grand, awesome things that you see. It'll be the little things. But those little things over time add up. And I guess that's one of my problem with business. You know, when I get business, I want to make profit the first day. But if you look at the most successful businesses, they didn't start out profitable the first day. Some of them didn't start out really profitable the first 5 years. They just kind of maintained, and all of a sudden they kind of peaked, and they made their credits, and then they started making profit from that point. And see, the thing about being in business, you might make $1 here, $1 there, $1 here, $1 there, and all of a sudden you add all these dollars up. Now you have a heap of cash. See, my problem with business myself is I make $1, I'm kind of disappointed, and most of us are too. And we look at it as nothing, but the Bible says, look, do not despise small beginnings, right? And that's how this thing works. So it's the same thing with temptation. Yes, you look at it here today, and it's this tomorrow, and it builds up to something. I never forget one of my favorite gospel rappers. He was talking about temptation in one of his raps. And he was saying that a little BET tonight leaves a little bit later on to watch a pornography. Because you know, BET, if he was watching music videos, most of them are half naked. And then he watches half naked women, watching music videos, and then of course what happens? The flesh started growing, and want to see more and more and more and more. So now, something he just was flipping through the TV and just saw, oh, I just want to see this video, this girl shaking her butt, now leads to something else later on, because now that video's playing over and over in his mind. Now it was bad that he just kind of was counterflipping, and he just started, I can talk about me, I'm guilty. And who's fascinating? And but you know what your vice is. If it's that home shopping network, that's why the Bible said, well, save yourself. You know you better than all the person that know you better than you is him. Because no matter what counselor you go to or what pastor you talk to, you're not going to tell them everything. You're not. You're not. You might give them 98%, but there's going to be 2% you won't look back. Right? That 2%, that's going to be 2% you're going to take to the grave. And then people might find out about it after you're gone. After that point, you're gone, right? We hear those stories all the time. You know, your daddy did. I'm talking about my daddy. Right? You ain't going to know that while I'm here. So, we say, like I said, temptation. So that's the thing. Be so careful about temptation when you find yourself in there trying to get out of that immediately. Because, like I said, temptation, when it's finished, bringing forth sin. And then the Bible says that sin is what? The wages of sin is death. So I look at it like this. When he talks about wages, typically when we talk about wages, we talk about what? Payment, right? So what he's saying is that if you keep doing this enough, just like if I went to work, I'm expecting payment at the end. And when he said is when payday comes up, it's resulting in death. Your payment is death. So, do we all sin? Yes. I probably did something I shouldn't have did this morning. But I asked for forgiveness. Yes. Right? You know, if I got up this morning and I stumped my toe in my dresser, I probably was not very happy about it. And I hope that I've grown to the point in my Christianity that I wouldn't say choice words. Yes. Or somebody left the empty tube of toothpaste on the dresser, and now you don't have your toothpaste, and you're kind of upset about it. Oh, y'all know these. If you have children, you have family, y'all know we go through these things. Sunday morning is the worst time in the house. That's the time that everybody wants to fight. Everybody wants to fight about something. It's right before you come to church. That's the time the car doesn't want to start. Or you know you got a flat tire, or one of the little kids that eggs your car. Yes, that's how it goes. However, through all of this, sin not. And if we do, we have an advocate with the Father who's already been put in place for us to say, okay, God, I fell short. And he's not coming to you because you never fell short. Think about it. I often look at this as almost like the master teacher and their apprentice. So what does a master teacher do? The master teacher supposedly knows everything. And the apprentice is what always up under them. So when they make mistakes, the master covers for them. It's kind of like when I went through and I got my PhD. I went through graduate school and got my doctorate. The whole point of this was it was an apprenticeship. You they're taking you through this, you don't see it at the time. All you do is you about to quit, you're tired of them, and you wonder why you're paying this person to torture you. I often remember it, and I equate it to, how many of you ever watched The Karate Kid? That's a great movie, Karate Kid. And you have Mr. Miyagi, and the whole thing was he finds Damien, this little guy getting beat up all the time. He comes in, so I'm going to teach you how to fight. Daniel's like, yeah, I want to learn how to fight. What I need to do is, just like anything else, when you first get saved, you got all this energy and you're enthusiastic. Yeah, Jesus, baby. Yeah, Jesus. You need to get saved. We're going to hell. Right? You have all this super enthusiasm. Then you get to a point and you start to walk and things start to happen. What happens in the movie? Daniel goes out, I think he gets beat up again. Well, I thought you was going to teach me how to fight. Look at my eye. This first thing that happens as believers, we get out there, we start doing this, somebody gets a black eye. Because I remember when you were shooting up, so why you out here trying to tell me this? Nope, black eye. Then we come back, well, something was going to tell me it was going to. But then what does he do? He has David, seems like he's doing busy work. He's doing what? Waxing his car. He still has like 10 cars. I'm like, how do you get on this car? He's having his car, waxing this way, waxing that way. And you looking at his side, he's just waxing the car. Paint this way, paint that way. No, it's up, down. So if you're looking at it from the corner eye, you're looking at it like he's waxing the guy's car for free. He's painting the guy's fence. This guy's getting all his housework done. He's in the house chilling. I'm still getting beat up. And then what happens? Daniel starts to complain about it, right? You know what? I'm tired of being your handyman. And the first thing he's going to do is try to slap him. And he's like, oh, where all this come from? And that's how God works with us. We sitting up, God, why am I in this situation? I was asking myself, God, why did I come to this Sunday? I was so happy, Robert. I really was. But I'm here listening, but if I was not here listening, I wouldn't have the opportunity to be speak before you all. It expanded my whole thought of Christianity. But when I came up, the whole 28 years I was in that church, I don't remember maybe one or two white people in the whole church. And I look at this morning, I'm talking almost more them than I am anybody else. But he had to put me in that experience, and I had to go through some things, and some things have happened to me to, you know what, this is how the kingdom of heaven is going to look. And it's not going to be pretty. You're going to deal with some situations. You're going to deal with some things, but my grace is sufficient because all things work together for them that are called. We forget that part. Most people hear it first. All things work together to be good to them that love the Lord. It's one piece that we forget, that are called according to his purpose. Right? So if you call according to his purpose, then those things will work together for you. Kind of like that. So now when he gets in the heat of the battle, he has all these skills that he's developed all along that he didn't even realize he was developing. And that's the same thing God does with us. He puts us in situations, he puts us through things, and we're developing all these skills. You know what this is really about when we come here on Sunday morning? Gaining confidence in the skills that he's already given you. This is what this is about. We're gaining confidence in what he's given us. Think about it. Go back to I'll tell you I was in weightlifting. So I think about Arnold Schwarzenegger. Look at all those muscles and stuff he had. He didn't go buy them. He developed what he had. That was already in his body. He just had to develop what he had and be consistent with it until he got to the point that it looked the way it looked. And then you see when he doesn't have any consistency, you look how bad he looks now, right? See what happens? You can be consistent for a while and get there and think you have arrived and stop. And what happens? You go right back to what you were before. That's why we have to continue to pray and trust God and seek. Because now I'm here. And that's where that humility part comes in. As soon as you think you got there, now you're in the heat of trouble. Why? Because when you're there, you start practicing. I practice all with other people, prayer. You know, I'll have to make practice famous. Practice? We talk about practice. Really, practice. And this guy was a great player. He's not even in the league anymore. Because you gotta remember, he was like this big. And he was really quick. But because he was really quick and he practiced his craft, it made him a lot better than the guys who were almost a foot taller than him. But when he started practicing, he saw what happened, right? And he tried to practice and watching somebody's car in the games. So that prayer keeps us connected to God. That keeps us being able to say, okay, when temptation comes, how to deal with it, so it won't get to the point of sin. It also keeps me humble, because I know that no matter what I do, I still have to work at it. Michael Jordan, arguably the greatest basketball player of all time. He'll tell you, he shot 8, 9, 10,000 shots. I think it was a book that came out this time about how to master your craft, no matter what it is. You have to at least spend 10,000 hours in practice. And they did a profile of some of the greatest athletes and musicians and people who were really good at what they did. They spent 10,000 hours a life. Tiger Woods didn't become Tiger Woods overnight. He was swinging the golf club like that since he was 2 years old. Michael Jordan, all these athletes, all those musicians, they've been playing this stuff for years. So how do you think you're just going to come in the kingdom of God and you're just going to blow up overnight? Because God got to know if he can trust you, first off. So he's got to test you. He's got lots of tribulations come your way. He's got lots of things come to shake you. To really try your faith. And then once he has you at a point that he knows he can trust you, then he can slowly release these things to you. So that's what he's talking about here. So we're talking about humility today on verses 9 through 11, eternal reward, and then in verses 13 and 15 we're talking about deceptions. Do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. I thank you all this morning. I hope that you got something out of this. We love you, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
I've got sound up here, so you should have sound down there. You want me to try it real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right.
We have sound.
Yep.
Thank you.